Hello, everyone, and welcome back to We Know Scripted TV here at RHAP. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here to talk about Rings of Power because we know Rings of Power, or at least Grace does. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are going to be talking about episode 6 of season 2 of Rings of Power. The Rings of Power? The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power? I'm not sure.
The Lord of the Rings: the Rings of Power, I believe. Yeah.
It's a lot of those.
I'm here. I thought I was gonna say that I was the Tom Bombadil, just like frolicking around, but he didn't really frolic that much. And also at the end of this episode, or in the middle of this episode, he just disappeared, I think. And so I actually think Josh is Tom Bombadil because Josh was with you for the last 2 weeks while I was away. You and I were like the stranger and Nori. We got separated.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
You came back for me.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Just as you need to look for your staff, I think, in the mid. I thought he found his staff. See, even I, who knows Lord of the Rings, feels like
Well, he found the staff, but he didn't ask for it nicely, and so the tree said no.
the tree said no. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Taran, I very much enjoyed listening to you and Josh, and I actually think you might be spot on with one of your theories about the show. So I'm excited to chat about this episode and everything else.
All right. Well, let's get into it then. This episode, this season has very much been like we'll focus on a couple of the plot lines and leave
Mm.
a couple of them out. This episode obviously has a good amount of Anatar and Celebrimbor and the manipulation happening there. We get a little bit of Galadriel and Adar. We circled back to Nori and the stranger. And then of course Numenor.
Numenor.
Uh,
People seemingly really want us to talk about Numenor there, as Josh was saying. I guess we'll talk about it. There is something that is interesting about Numenor that I'm excited to chat about. Mostly, I'm like, all right. I actually thought the stuff this episode was pretty good. This actually was a pretty good, I think, a well balanced episode in terms of mostly having the stuff I like. Like we got the teensiest bit of Arondir at the beginning, doing cool fight stuff, and then finding a map, and then we didn't see him the whole rest of the episode. And I was like,
I forgot he was in this
that's
episode.
actually maybe kind of perfect. It's kind of the perfect amount of Arondir stuff for me so far. I think they don't know what to do with Arondir. I think.
I liked the Arondir stuff this season so far. I'll take Arondir over Numenor, honestly.
I think that's fair. I think if you trade out some of the Numenor stuff, I think that's for Arondir content. It's good. But love the Anatar stuff. As Josh was saying, that's my favorite stuff is the making of the rings. Unsurprisingly, on the Rings of Power, I like when they're making the rings. I like the Galadriel and Adar stuff, and I like the Stranger stuff mostly.
So I've really been enjoying the season. This episode to me, and I don't know if this is like the consensus by any means. I think I've seen a lot of people who liked this episode, but like this one to me was a little bit of a dip. I think last episode Numenor was like, okay, I see you, Numenor. I see you. This was fun. Somebody died. Okay. Then this episode felt like back to classic Numenor that I don't really care about. And that's just me, but it just it feels so by the numbers. Like I'm watching this amalgamation of a plot line I've seen a million times in a million different stories with very few like deviations or like real intrigue beyond what we all know is kind of like the plot line for it. And I still don't understand its connection to the main plot line. So that's I think also a huge part of why it's hurting for me. But particularly I found that scene at the end where they meet the sea monster and then like the handful of people start cheering and it just felt a little low budget to me.
No good for me. Like I'm fine with the sort of like trial by combat, but it's actually against the waves and the tides of the sea, and you have to fight them. And Muriel coming in and stepping in, like, yeah, I've seen it before a million times. I'm not like, I don't completely hate it. I did think the beast screaming in her face, and then she gets like thrown back onto the shores. I'm like, but like how? But like what? But what actually? Like what actually happened? I think I am more interested in that, and they didn't show it to us. For me, there is a big piece of this that is I'm kind of only invested in it because I know that it leads to something about the lore that I'm interested in seeing the answers to in a way that we don't really have answers from Tolkien's work. So the show is going to try to connect two dots in a way that to me is interesting. Um, but
Mm.
like we basically have gotten none of that so far. So
Well, and me who
therefore,
doesn't know what
yeah,
those dots are,
that's right. And I'm
I'm just
hesitant to say
watching a
what they
dot.
are, and I don't think I will. Yeah, you're just watching a dot that's kind of doing mostly nothing.
I'm
Yeah.
just watching a like, if we took Numenor and just made it into, its own show, which is what it feels like to me right now, it would be
Mm,
a very generic, not very interesting show to me. And so I think it needs I need to find its connection, soon. And uh and just like I think in part because we're simultaneously spending a lot of time for this season of the show Rings of Power here, but also not enough time to really flesh out the proper plot of it. It's this middle ground that just doesn't quite land. I What I said last week was that, they were using some cheat codes to get me invested, which is, oh, I really hate this character, I really like,
mhm, mhm.
but it didn't have as much of that in this episode for me. Those cheat codes weren't there. And so instead it was just kind of like, okay, I get where we're going with this. As soon as the like guy next to hair guy was like, "Oh, I've got an idea. Live by the ancient traditions, die by the ancient traditions." I was like, "Well, that's stupid. Obviously, the ancient traditions are going to side with the people who believe in the ancient traditions. Like,
Well,
this is going to backfire."
it's pretty like James Bond villain of like, I shall tie you up to the laser board, but I will leave the room for 5 minutes. It's
Yeah,
like
it's like, "Wha
just
oh,
friggin'
man, what
kill
do
him.
we do now? I don't know. I guess let their gods support them or whatever." I like, just I don't know, imprison him, kill him, anything, really.
Okay, so I guess one piece of this that I think is something that's like missing from it about where it could. And I was talking. I've said it a lot last while. I do feel like one of my like the things I fall back on is like, you know what they could have been, you know what they could be doing, and it's a little bit like I know that people always want to hear, but forgive me for a moment, which is that the idea of Numenor is that they were sort of given or bestowed this land by elves, this like island, and for a while that was fine, and they like grew into to be prosperous, and then eventually they were like, actually, no elves allowed. Put a big sign on the door being like, you're not allowed to come in. And so the other piece of like the thing that works, I think, for political things that are stories that are political is I do think, and I think something that like House of the Dragon tapped into really well this season that we liked was you could see how it would impact like the people who are there and not just the people who are caught up in the thing. And I feel like that's the biggest piece that's missing. So there is a reason why Farazan, who is the like, the guy who has like done a coup and been given the divine order from the eagle to be able to be king, he can't just like he feels like he can't just kill Muriel and he just can't just kill like Elendil. He can't just like he feels like he can't do what he actually would want to do, which is what we think he should do instead of doing these trial by combat things. Um but I feel like there's not enough of a reasoning within the universe of the show to feel like he can't do that. He feels almost like that he could do anything he wants. Like they are booing when he's like, I'm actually going to do the trial by like all the people are booing.
Exactly.
And then so it doesn't feel like there are reasons why he has to do like it's not fleshed out enough, I think, well enough to feel like he can't do the things he wants to do in order to like master manipulate his ascension to the throne and make sure that it doesn't just like immediately crumble beneath his feet if he doesn't do the things he's doing. Like I am basically inferring all of that instead of it actually being in the show.
I had the same inference. Like, I was thinking like, "Oh, well, maybe it's because of this," but then you're right, like, the text of the show was not supporting that
Yeah.
inference, and so I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, it seems like they want him to kill him." Maybe the small folk, that we don't see might not want this or, like,
I,
whatever, but it still feels like there are so many better options, to handle this, especially given that you
yeah.
already killed a cool
Yeah.
dude, you know?
Well, yeah, because there's the inference that like it's because of their connections to elven culture that Muriel is therefore unsuited to be queen. But then we saw last episode him and he went and like he has the sphere, the elfin sphere that he's going to be using for his own. So he's a total hypocrite. But
Oh, yeah.
like that's not translating, I think, well enough into like what he is saying and doing and how he's basically trying to manipulate um everybody, or even other than the most like I think like the best sort of political intrigue stories, there is another reason for his desire to rule. I think like, yeah, you can just say like he wants to be powerful. That's fine. That works in terms of like why he would be so power hungry. But I don't really know like what caused his desire to do that.
Because
Like
he
what
has a great mustache he could be twirling, and he doesn't get to unless he's king.
That's so true. I forgot. I forgot that he has pretty sweet facial hair. Yeah. Yeah, he's got
That's
the
I
like
mean, that's
those
honestly
hair.
that's how it feels to me. It's just, I just feel very underwhelmed by the whole process. They're trying to do this like political intrigue thing, but I don't think they've done enough work to set it up, and it just feels very rote by the numbers, which is fine because I can just get through these scenes, and eventually I'm sure it will connect back and it'll be fine. But in terms of its presence here, it's just not quite landing for me, and I wish there were some things that they were doing a little differently. But
Yeah.
it's not ruining the show for me.
Yeah, and I don't mean to. I think it's totally fair for like we said before. I'm seeing where the dots can connect. They just haven't connected yet, and so maybe I have more patience for it. I think it's completely fair to like not have and be like, this is just not working. I think that so I don't mean to say this statement that I'm going to say as like a dismissal of the critique of the show because I think it's a fair critique. I think that they will eventually connect the dots. There is a reason
Oh,
why
yeah.
we are spending a lot of time on Numenor, and with these people in particular. And some of their faiths are known if you've read the appendices, and some of them are not in ways that is also interesting and leaves a lot of room for what might happen. So,
I think
and
in particular, like, one of the big disappointments of the Numenor segment for me as well was that they set up that, the daughter who betrayed the father, was, like, super good friends with the guy that died.
yeah,
And we already saw that she, like, went ballistic when she thought her brother died. So, like, I was waiting for her reaction in any any way, to the death of that guy. Nothing. Just nothing there. So it just felt like I mean, was he even mentioned in this episode?
I
Like, it
don't think
really just
so.
felt like they just brushed that one right under the rug, and it just feels like, what are we doing here then? Like, come on.
Unfortunately, I do think that Muriel falls into a little bit of there's ways in which like these shows and Tolkien to a degree did write some pretty interesting female characters, and unfortunately, I think that the show doesn't really, based on what I know is going to happen with Muriel, I think the show doesn't really know how to like she gets this moment of coming to step in for Elendil, but I feel like they're more interested in Farazan and Elendil than they are particularly in Muriel to a degree where even in a story that's not totally working, I feel like she's almost the least serviced of our like three central characters in that story, which is a little bit of a shame because she could be very interesting.
Well, some slightly more interesting things, I think, were going on with Galadriel and Adar. I guess let me just get my complaints out of the way first, maybe,
I feel
because
like this is the
I've
theme of the pod. Like, let's start with
I've
Numenor, which we didn't love. Now you start with your Gladriel Adar complaints, and then we'll get to the good stuff.
I've been very positive on the show thus far, and I am still enjoying it. I just had some specific issues with this episode, and one of which is for me, Adar still isn't working.
Oh
I
no.
saw him at the start of season 2, and I was like, "Why does he look so weird?"
Yeah.
And then I learned after he has been replaced, the actor,
Yes. Yeah.
and I was like, "Okay, I'm sure I'll get used to him." I'm still not used to him. It's just he's so different. He seems like a completely different person to me than the previous Adar, and it really bothers me, and I really don't want it to bother me, but it does. And so I'm having a hard time with these scenes, and I also didn't love that, like, out of nowhere, he knew that it was Halbrand. Am I wrong about this? I thought Halbrand had tricked him, and now all of a sudden he's just like, "So it's Halbrand, right?" Uh, Now that you've confirmed it for me, mistake. Time for me to fall into Halbrand's trap anyway. I'm just very confused about all of that.
Yeah, I don't think because he lets Halbrand go earlier in the season.
Right.
Like he lets him go. So if he, I guess he could have like realized it afterwards in the meantime. But yeah, I don't that to me doesn't. I would agree it doesn't totally work. I don't. I like the character. I like the actor who's playing Adar. It does work for me. For me, there's a thing that coming out of the first batch of episodes. This is the last time you and I podcasted about this. There was a thing that I feel like you said about the episode that I really liked, which was, even if it doesn't all the way get there, it's basically the scene where like Sauron like recreates himself, where he like goes from like being killed, the blood dripping down, him becoming goo, traveling over land, eventually like killing somebody and inhabiting a body. Like all of that, like it's not the most like, and this is how the magic works. It doesn't officially do that, but it gives you a little bit of the sense in which like it gives you more information than you had before. There's a scene between Adar and Galadriel where he is like, the reason that he needs her to help him is because of the rings. But he's like, I have the crown that I stabbed Sauron with, and I need your rings. He's like, and together the two of those things should be able to defeat Sauron. And I'm like, I thought he just stabbed him with the crown. Like I think I don't
Oh yeah,
I guess there is some inherent magic in that crown that then
it's
makes it an
Morgoth's
actual,
crown, right?
yeah, Morgoth. But and I guess like that does make sense that like Morgoth would have had like the magical artifacts has like this is what
He was got like my understanding is that this is like Morgoth is like the big baddie, even beyond Sauron,
he was the previous big baddie who they
right?
like
And
yeah,
Sauron was like one of his dudes,
yeah, as
and
was
Sauron is
Adar.
like taken over to some degree.
Yeah,
And that this is his crown, and that this is a very powerful crown, and that Sauron was going to use this crown to subjugate the orcs.
right. Right.
Was my
Right.
understanding.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense that he can use the between subjugating all of the orcs, which he seemingly is doing without the Adder's doing without the crown. But I guess he could do it
Well,
more.
yeah, I mean, seemingly Adar is like actually just pro orc, you know,
Yeah,
or
right. He doesn't feel like, yeah. And
use
then
the
with
correct
the
terminology.
and then with the rings, he can then like together that's going to let them defeat Sauron. I guess that tracks and that
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
sense.
the crown, nearly did it by itself.
Right.
You could theoretically see why the rings, but like, I get like my thing was like that's all magic goopily goo. I don't really care.
Like Sauron. He was
What I care
goobly
about
goo.
is like character, and it just like I was waiting for the moment where Galadriel's like, "Hey, idiot, you were sent here by Halbrand. He's Sauron."
Right.
And he goes, "Oh no," or not believe, or he doesn't believe her or something. But when he says it to her out of nowhere, it's like, well, then what is your motivation here? I don't know what you are doing. Um, and I can come up with one in my head that maybe makes sense, which is like, okay, maybe he knew that Halbrand was Sauron, but decided to pretend like he was falling into the trap, but it certainly seems like he is regardless. Maybe he realized it after he let him go and then continued to do the thing that he like maybe he has some secret plan. Maybe the plan all along was to treat with the elves, but seeing Galadriel was a complete accident. He wasn't obviously planning to meet with Galadriel on his way to the place. So I just, what is it? Maybe they'll tell us later. Maybe there is some deep seated secret plan for, I don't know, but it was just, it just didn't like compute in my head. It didn't seem to follow what I had seen before. And I don't really, it just, and again, I'm willing to just let it go because it's just like, we're just vibing here. But it was annoying to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of ideas in this in especially with Adar that I really like because he's a new invention for the show, and this idea of like a guy who is controlling an army of orcs who actually is not just like immediately like, oh yeah, let's just team up with Sauron, like let's like bow down to Sauron. That's cool. I like that a lot. I think that's very interesting and complex in a way that like just honestly sometimes Lord of the Rings like isn't, right. And then now this extra thing of being like, and if we can team with the elves to go to Aragon. And I also like the idea that like to a degree, but to a degree that everybody is falling into exactly what Sauron is wanting them to do, to me is compelling. It then becomes a little tough to then have a character who can seemingly spot every time it's actually a trap of Sauron. I think is a little becomes a little like the fact that 2 episodes ago, she's like, we should not be going this way because that's the way Sauron wants us to go. We should take the extra long way and go the other way. That's fine, but it's almost like that was to build a character trait of like Galadriel can spot that Sauron is doing all this stuff. But now almost every time anybody is doing something that falls into Sauron's trap, you just have Galadriel now being like, don't do that. That's a trap. And I feel like that's become a little bit already in like the span of 3 episodes, a little repetitive. I don't know how you like fix that. It's almost like the toothpaste is out of the tube on that one. Like Galadriel can just tell when Sauron has an evil plan.
I mean, I'm fine with that. She has, like, a special relationship with him at this point, right? Like, she
Yeah.
spent a long time with him. For her to be able to see through it a little bit better, makes some sense to me, even if it is maybe repetitive, but, like, I just, then, again, it's just like, what is Adar doing, like, with this information? He's just like, "No, no, no, I got this. This is exactly what he told me to do, and I'm gonna do it. This is not his trap." Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but, I thought I do like, the character outside of that. I do, and, like, the small correction of, like, Uruk, and this notion of, like, "Well, what are you gonna do if we team up and then, we win?" Like, do we get to keep our home? Like what's gonna happen there? I like that concept in general. But yeah, this scene was a little weird. And then like, what's with the sexual tension?
Between between them,
Yeah,
is there? I
definitely.
guess. This is just they're both, they're both sort of like he's in the most like, corrupt elfin way. He's a little,
I mean, I think Galadriel's supposed to be like the most beautiful person ever,
yeah,
so I
she
guess
is.
that tracks. But
Yeah, yeah,
listen, she's just got chemistry with people. It just happens.
yeah. Um, yeah, I guess in terms of like what Adar want, I feel like there does have to be a way in which now he then knows that it's a trap, and so he will figure out how to not make it a trap, but for himself, right? Like he's definitely just going to betray Galadriel, I think, probably, right?
Oh, I mean, he basically already has, right? Like, he was just
Yeah,
like, "Now that you've told me this, idiot, I'm just gonna go ahead with my own plan. Thanks."
yeah. And at the end of the episode, we do see that Aragon is being attacked. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Yeah, because it almost wouldn't make sense for him to be like, "Let's go together," then not actually do it and hope that her army is strong enough or whatever. Like, because and the other piece I did like about this is like when he's like, "Okay, if I do this, your king won't just then like kill me," right? Like you have there's again there's so many interesting ideas in here. I just don't know that it's like always fully being executed as
Yeah,
strongly
it's like, "Hey,
as
let's
it
make
probably
a
could be.
deal. I'm immediately gonna go back on the deal." And it's like, typically, if you're trying to, like, orchestrate something, you'd be like, "Alright, I'm gonna get the elves to fight Sauron, and then,
Right.
then I get to pick off the stragglers." Instead, he's like, "No, no, no. I'll do that. I'll fight them, weaken myself, and then have the elves come in to sweep up the rest." Like, I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe we'll understand it in the future. Maybe I'll take back the criticism. Um,
Okay, so one way that could work is that like I mean, the problem is that he does seem to like genuinely. Oh, do you know who we actually haven't seen yet? Who probably actually there's one piece of this that has already been mentioned this season, which is the trolls. The trolls showed up in episode 2 or 3, I
mhm.
think. So we have not seen the troll. So you can imagine a moment where the trolls show up as like you thought we were dead. There also could be this thing of like a lot of what how Halbrand ended up like luring was like to be to show signs of weakness and actually be like trapped and summoned. And maybe Adar thinks he's like, if I like go and lose and then he kidnaps me and then I'll stab him with the secret crown I have behind my back or something. I don't know.
It's just like, if he knew he was Sauron, just while he's in the dungeon, stab him with the crown,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I guess maybe he needed the rings, but, here's an idea: stab him with the crown, turn him to goop, keep him in a jar, go to the rings, go get the rings now that he's in the jar, don't let him go. And if you didn't know he was Sauron at the time, why are we not getting a scene where he's like, oh no, it's the usual suspects moment. It's, oh my god, he walked away from us and we had him right there. He came up with the name from the things behind me. Like, have the moment in the show where I know that he comes to the realization.
Yeah, I think I just want to remember why he let him go. I want to see if I can like pull that up in my own notes about why did he let Halbrand go, because I think that he either needed Halbrand to go do and aka Sauron, he needed him to basically like go make more rings probably, which I get, but he doesn't really know about the ring power, I think, so that doesn't really track. Like what did he think he could benefit from letting Halbrand go? or he had to have found out about it after, and
These are
it would be
questions
good.
I hope I'm supposed to be asking right
Right.
now that they will answer. It just feels like it doesn't feel great to have these questions. This does not feel to me like, "Ooh, I can't wait to find out," kind of question. It feels more to me like, "What?" So, hopefully it's resolved, but, anyway,
No, that makes I think that that's very fair. For me, I do think like I mean I think the acting, the performance is all working. The ideas in this are cool. I'm just hoping it can pay off. So we'll see.
mm.
Yeah.
We also got some Nori, some Stranger. This was also Bombadil was a little strange to me in this episode as well. Like, hey, ditch your friends, bro.
um yeah, so you and Josh talked about like Tom Bombadil showing up in the show and not being maybe as frolicky as he is in the books, which could be because we are not at the time in which the books are. So this could be an early version of Tom Bombadil. In the books, he has basically basically, I really wanted Matt Berry to play Tom Bombadil only because there kept being these jokes about like how basically the whole thing in the book is like Tom Bombadil has a very attractive wife. I think like that's a perfect character trait for essentially Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows as Tom Bombadil.
Mhm.
But it's fine. What we got is fine. But yeah, he didn't seem super. He was very serious. I thought for like what I might thought we might get out of a Tom Bombadil. Yeah, to the point where this episode he's like, do you really have to go? Are they friends or like are you going to your destiny? And to me, Taran does feel like maybe your idea that this is not Gandalf and this is actually Saruman, I think is actually very good. And I know Josh was like, oof, that would be heartbreaking to find that he has this like bond and relationship with the Harfoots that he betrays. I think that makes it more powerful. When I was early into being a dungeon master, DM Philly would always tell me, our good friend DM Philly would always say, um, destroy what your characters love. That's what he told me. He's like,
Mhm.
build something up, don't take it away immediately. Like, if they have this, artifact or a place or an NPC that they love, you let them care for it until they fall in love with it. And then you get emotional stakes by destroying and killing that thing. And so in this version, I do think there is a lot to mine, I think, from the stranger being Saruman using and learning about the hobbits only to then be corrupted and influenced and betray that relationship. And then therefore when you have Gandalf come, and whether or not we get Gandalf in the show at all, I don't know, but there is the world where like isn't that interesting to think about? Like Gandalf built a relationship with hobbits who were probably even less inclined to believe and trust him because they had been like duped so badly by Saruman. I think that's pretty interesting, and I do think, and the other reason why I think you're so spot on, Taran, is because we have not said this guy's name for so long. This is such a thing, and everybody thinks it's Gandalf. And I don't think everybody thinks it's Gandalf. I think people think like it's probably Gandalf, right? I think it's probably Saruman, Taran.
I appreciate it. But, I agree. I think it would be cool. I have no idea how lore accurate it would be. But, there are a couple reasons why I think I'm wrong. One is that, there are a lot of lore more up to date people than me out there that have have not even mentioned this as a theory. And 2, um, it does feel like, how do we get there from this? Because if Bombadil is saying, "Abandon your friends," we're not gonna say that, like, Bombadil helped Saruman make the decision to abandon the hobbits, right? Like Bombadil's like not that guy. What I'm imagining this is that Bombadil is like testing Gandalf about like he obviously shouldn't abandon his friends. And he can't. He is not ready. He is failing his tests because he's here with Bombadil instead of protecting his friends. And that as soon as he goes and protects his friends, that is passing the test, and then he will get his staff, and then things will be better. Is kind of like the way that it seems like this is being set up, which obviously doesn't. I mean, it still could theoretically track as Saruman, and I agree. I think it would be very fun if this was like a setup to Like, look at Saruman's a good guy. I think he was a good guy for a long time, and then he just
Well, why wouldn't a Gandalf try?
started peeping on Sauron too much and got corrupted.
Well, the whole point is that like he was the wisest and eldest. He's the like leader of the wizards who come the Astari, and then eventually he gets corrupted, and it's a surprise and a shock to Gandalf that he
Mhm.
would do that. The I think the biggest thing, and Josh mentioned it last week or like 2 weeks ago, is that like yes, based on what is written, Gandalf and Saruman do not show up on Middle Earth until the Third Age, and we are like in the Second Age, and certainly the show could decide to have, it's like, oh, we got to do the show in the Second Age. Sorry, we have to make all the wizards come like thousands of years before they actually arrived. That's certainly fair. It does seem to imply that like we really have no idea who this dark wizard, who's also the Kieran Hines character, who hasn't shown up, I think, in a couple of weeks, who they could be. The other world, which I think is like the most lore accurate, but also the most disappointing version, is that these are just wizards that aren't around by the time the show happened. That for whatever
That's
reason, the wizards that are like the reason that Gandalf and Saruman, sorry, are sent is to fight the power of Sauron in the Third Age. So there is the world where like these are wizards who were sent previously, and there isn't a lot of lore about them or anything, and they're made up. They're entirely invention of the show as people who are there to do something and basically fail in their task or have some other reason to not be there anymore.
yeah, that's the primary theory that exists that is not Gandalf, is that these are blue wizards. And I think that the dark wizard is still, I think, fairly likely to be one. These just and I don't know what blue wizards are, is just what I've
Blue.
seen.
The only thing about blue wizards is that there are other wizards who are Astari who were sent to Middle Earth.
Right.
And that they eventually wear blue robes. That's why they're called the blue wizard. There's two of them, so it could just be these two. And then there's also Radagast, who is we have seen him in The Hobbit, I believe. We've seen him. He's like another. So there's five of them. That basically accounts for all of them if you assume that these two are blue wizards. And again, blue wizards just means they wore blue robes at some point.
Yes.
And that's why.
From what I've seen, though, this episode in particular has people feeling like the blue wizard theory for the stranger is even less likely at this point, and that he is more likely to be Gandalf. Just little hints being dropped for people who know the lore just seems to stack up, stack up, stack up that it's Gandalf. Even though they're not happy about it because it's not lore accurate that he's here in the Second Age. Um,
So
listen,
my thing, Taryn, is not that they're even. My thing isn't even that they're blue wizards. It's that they are not. They are not the five wizards that we know and have been written about, and that they were sent. We know that like the stranger was like came down in basically a meteor, like he arrived on Earth. That these are just like wizards that were never written about, and I wonder how that would land with lore of like, is it better to take the stuff that Tolkien wrote and be like, actually this happened thousands of years before he actually said it was, or it's like, because he didn't say anything about this, we can insert this thing into the story of like wizards who were never written about, and there can be a moment at the end of the show where it's like, and we've done our duty and we shall be erased from history and no one shall ever know, which like doesn't make sense because it's not how Tolkien wrote, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
I
could they
think at this
create
point
this?
you can't do it. I think they've
And
prolonged
it's
this
so
too
disappointing.
much.
But haven't they
For
prolonged it so much for it not like
I
for it to
agree.
be
I think they've
Gandalf is
prolonged it too
also
much for
weird.
it to be Gandalf. They've prolonged it too much to be a blue wizard. They've prolonged it too much in general. I quite frankly, I still, in my opinion, the best reason to have prolonged it this long is to fake everyone out, and it's Saruman. Because I think the reason I came to that conclusion, or not, and not even conclusion, just a thought in my head, was because for me, the way I would write a story, it's the thing that fits the beats the best.
Yeah.
But so because it feels to me now like no matter who this is revealed to be, people are going to be disappointed because it's been built up so long. Either it's Gandalf and it's like, yeah, we knew that, or it's some random person you don't know, and it's like, well, then what was all the hype about? And so a middle ground like Saruman, which would make probably everyone be like, what? Or maybe I don't know, maybe it would make them excited because I don't know enough about the lore stuff, but it just feels at this point like it's been strained far past its limit, and they need to just get on with it and figure out what they're doing with the reveal of this character. again, maybe they reveal it and it's really cool and fun. And because I feel like the same thing was said about Sauron last season, Halbrand.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people thought he was Sauron, and it was just like, isn't this obvious that he's Sauron? Why are they? It seems like there are so many hints that this is Sauron, but they're not saying it. And then the reveal comes and it works, and now he's like one of the best characters, the best character on the show. And so, I won't be maybe as down as most people are about this because I'll have a little bit of faith in this reveal, but I can see where people are a little bit chafed by the whole situation.
For me, because they've adapted it, they've changed lore. I actually don't. I don't think I'll be mad at any answer. Like I'm not gonna be mad at the show for any answer they give, unless it doesn't make character like unless I feel like it like is like I don't really care who he is because of I care that now it's not accurate to the book like in any way. I think in a way like it either is not there or it's a blue wizard or it's them. Either way, they've changed stuff, so it doesn't really matter to me. I just want it to work as a reveal. Um, so we'll see. I guess we'll see if they and I can understand where if you ended season one being like this character is Sauron, but they also didn't want to do this character is Gandalf, and I feel like they could have done it at the beginning of season two, and then it's like it was the beginning of season two thing, and now it just feels like it's lingering in a way that like is tough to feel like it will be super satisfying when it happens. But I can understand why they wanted to keep this stuff a mystery for some particular reason, and so we'll
We'll
see.
see.
Yeah.
I think "we'll see" is truly the answer here, because I think the topic has certainly been talked to death. Um, we also saw, Nori, and the crew. And again, I feel like these scenes didn't quite work as well for me in this episode as they had before, because I'm missing the whimsy and the adventure and the vibe. And, like, instead, it's, like, this very kind of, like, serious, like plot heavy kind of, well, we're being attacked or like we're being hunted. Maybe I should give myself up. Maybe I need to do this. Are we going to be saved by the stranger yet? Like stuff like that. And I'm still just kind of thinking, how is this connected to the main plot? Like I was fond of the Harfoots in season one because it felt like they had their own plot with their own stakes and a mystery and stuff like that. This feels like we've been dragging our feet a little bit, with, like,
They got big feet, Taran. They got big hairy feet.
I know, but since episode 1, they've been hunted by these random dudes, and it's episode 6, and they're still just being hunted by these random dudes, and I like that they found this cool settlement, and I like that Bombadil got involved, but it just feels like I need to pick up the pace a little bit. I'm sure we're going to very soon, so it was fine. I'm unfortunately not invested in the romance with nobody. But what are we gonna do?
Even the Amazon Prime X-ray feature is giving him his actual. He's Mary Mac. That's his name, which I like much better than Nobody. I'm not really invested in this either. I did like the conversation between Nori and I think her name is Gundable, the mom steward. I also have a big fondness, not just for hobbits, but of hobbit types, because at the summer camp I went to as a camper and then a staff member, we named age groups by hobbit names. So we had stewards and we had Harfeet and we had share. We had all these different. So I'm very fond of it. I did like the thing of like it's very interesting to think of like a group of nomadic people and like Nori having grown up in a nomadic
Mhm.
society coming and being like, but why don't you leave? Like it's so much harder to just live in the same place all the time. And she's like, but this is, my granddad built this, but and I care for this tree. I did really like that stuff. And I think that one piece of conversation is really good. I don't know how it links to everything else, other than that likely at some point we're gonna get the the creation of the Shire. At some point we're gonna get that of like probably Nori being like, we should build the Shire. We should build this one place where we live forever and ever. And we'll see like the Baggins home or whatever. Like that's what we're getting
I
probably. But
I
yeah.
agree. I liked the speech, and I apologize to the listeners today and this week because I'm such a stick in the mud. But when I watched this scene, I was like, but she was so excited about them possibly finding the new home. Like, when she found out that she was a Harfoot and like, "Oh, a descendant of this person that went off to find the promised land. Did you
Yeah.
find it? Or can we move to the promised land?" And now she's having this whole speech about like, "No, no, we'd rather die than leave here." And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
That was unfortunately what I was thinking about the whole time she had that speech.
Kind of a thing of like You don't have one other character you could throw out to that Nori has the conversation with, so it's not the same person due to the thing before. But no, we're gonna give this person,
It
which is
it's
fine. Give
fine.
her
It's
screen time.
it's not
You
a
know?
it's not a
Yeah, 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 yeah,
serious
yeah,
critique. It's just
yeah.
it for me, it ruined the moment a little bit. But the fact that I was even thinking about it in that way.
Well, you can be a
Um,
stick in mud. You're not nomadic, so the stick will still be there. You can put it in the mud all you want. Hmm.
okay, well, let's get to the stuff I did like a lot.
The main
Uh
event. Yeah.
Anatar, Sauron, Celebrimbor, and the dwarves. Because this stuff is really working for me. I mean, the dwarf stuff moving so quickly is still a little strange, but I'm willing to just yada yada it. Um, this is just so fun. I mean, the manipulation of Celebrimbor. I think when we started watching the first 3 episodes, I was like, this, it's a little in your face, but it's getting its point across. I think it very quickly turned into it kind of makes sense that it's in your face because this is not like subtle manipulation. This is human manipulation. This is like the kinds of things that we would see in our everyday lives
Mm,
if you're unfortunate in your life, maybe.
mm.
Um, and so to see this guy Celebrimbor just be broken down to the point where it's now, Anatar is able to manipulate those around him to say he's the guy, he's the monster, and his actions are backing that up because of how broken down he is as a person, and now to be isolated and you like don't leave, and then this really cool like illusion manipulation going on. It's this really really works for me, and like more of this. I like it.
Yeah, I was a little worried when like Celebrimbor is like for like probably the second or third time in the show being like, I'm not making the rings for men, and he leaves. And Anatar's being like, if you leave, it'll be the demise. And then he goes outside and it's all sunny. And then when the reveal happens that it's all an illusion, it did just work for me. Like it's again, I think you're right. It's like a little like over like we're hitting us over the head with it. But I think the stuff about people being manipulated is a thing that I think is like if it's if Celebrimbor just agrees with every single thing Anatar says, then that doesn't feel natural or real.
Exactly.
And
It's the
if
fact that
he,
he's fighting back. Once he starts to fight back, that's when it
yeah,
starts working for me.
yeah, and I think the show is right to have him do it multiple times to not feel like it's like you also can't have it just be like I gave you the one piece of information that worked, and you're seeing where Anatar is shifting into what's working and what's not working to get Celebrimbor to stay. And in this scene, it said he does need it to be like, dude, we're not being you're totally fine. Like you're, everything is all right. You just got to go back in there and do your work and we'll be fine. I thought that was very good, very cool. I've been enjoying this content. On the other hand, you have like the trepidation about the dwarves, like from Durin, Prince Durin and King Durin like being corrupted by power. I mean, this is what the story is. I mean, I feel a lot of times I feel like I'm like spoiling stuff here in terms of like what's to come. But I think if you've watched the movies, you know that Khazad-dûm is an empty, barren, dark, mysterious place that is no longer being mined. And this is a story that is this is another one where the metaphor is very good, and it's because Tolkien was like one of the first people to like write it, like to have huge amounts of success with it, that it's like it works. Which is, yeah, when you keep digging for gold, like you keep digging and digging, and you're consumed with this thing, and you're letting the power go to your head, bad things will happen. And we saw like an allusion to that last week. I don't know that I was like the biggest fan of like Disa summoning bats, but like it's not like it's fine. It's
I liked it.
yeah, I think it's like this.
I like Durin coming out and being like, "I love you."
I love you. They're the best. They're the best couple on the show. Like I like this. I loved the lore of singing being a way to find like to use your voice reverberations and some magic to like figure out where you should mine. I thought that was really cool. So her being able to like do it for another thing, which is like get the bats out of the like it's totally like I'm like a little like yeah, cheesy, but it's fine. It's not like you said earlier with like something else. You're like it doesn't ruin the show for me to have this stuff in here.
What
It's the
I thought
exact
was
same thing for me.
cheesy was the light at the end of the cave.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I feel like you got halfway there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
changed it to like, I see what you're doing. I feel like you got halfway there. If we had changed it a little more so that it wasn't so obvious, I would have liked it more.
Did we catch I only watched this episode once today. So how Anatar got the ground down Mithro, because
Yes,
the when he went to chat with, when Durin like said, like, King Durin was like no, only to then be like he's gonna come back and realize like he's gonna need a, he's gonna pay out the butt for it. But how he got the like ground, the amount he would need for the rings, there is a name drop, but I just
the
didn't
mithril.
track it. The Mithril, yeah.
Um,
So when Anatar gives Celebrimbor the amount he'll
oh,
need
yeah,
for the Rings of
he
Men,
says ground by somebody himself.
somebody, yeah, and I just missed.
Yeah,
I'll
I
have
don't
to
know
go
who.
back and check it. Because the whole thing was like about getting enough. So I feel like again, I think this stuff is working the best for me, and it's working extremely well. So it's a very minor nitpick. It's a minor nitpick because it's about mining, which is that the whole thing was like he's going to come back and pay
Yes.
at the. So I would have liked maybe a small thing of seeing that Durin, like even like decent Durin realizing like, oh my god, you did give him Mithril or whatever. However he got the, if he stole it, that's fine. I need, and again, 6 episodes of an 8 episode season, we maybe get it. In next episode, there's a scene where it's like, oh my god, you gave him the Mithril, but it's like, yeah, but look all the stuff I got. Blah
Yeah,
blah 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 blah.
this one to me felt, like an inconsistency that they definitely planned to explain, because it was so like, this is one where I'm not like, "I hope it's explained." I'm fairly confident that this was intended to be a little bit like, "Wait, where did he get the mithril from?" And so I would expect that it's either A, not real, an illusion, part of the illusion. He doesn't actually have the mithril yet, but he needed to show it to him in that moment to convince him to go back inside, and that he's either going to go and get the mithril, the real mithril later, or he's going to substitute in some other kind of ingredient. I saw people talking about his blood. He cut his hand, which I felt was maybe as part of to make the illusion. I'm not sure,
I thought that
but
too. I think it's that. Yeah, I that's what.
um, but it could have just been fake. He could have stolen it, and, we might see later, like in the next episode, King Durin is like, "Where's the mithril? Who
Yes,
stole it from me?" And there could be some stuff going on there.
yes, I do have an answer, which I just pulled up the scene, put on the subtitles. Mithril, refined to a powder by Narvi himself, and
Yeah,
Narvi is he's in the second episode. He's one of the dwarves, I think, who like one of the. He might even be the head miner, I think.
the guy that
But
got scared away by bats.
yeah, could be. Uh, yeah. So
Was that supposed to scare us? Like, come on, don't you know that she's a magic person?
yeah. So it is Narvi who get, supposedly, again, that could be a lie from Anatar, but supposedly a dwarf who is not Durin gave him just enough mithril to create the Rings of Men. It
So,
was
yeah,
then
I think the 3 options are, it's fake to begin with. He doesn't actually have the mithril. He'll either get it later or substitute. 2, he stole it, and we'll find out that he stole it in the next episode. Or 3, he's already gone back and made a deal, and we'll find out what the deal was in the next episode. I think those are the 3 primary, explanations that I fully expect we will see in the next, at least in either the next episode or the following one. I would assume the next episode,
okay.
because I don't think you can leave something like that hanging too long.
I think it being fake mithril, I think, doesn't help the fact that like he needs him to make like the piece of this that it like what the thing I liked about the scene too, where Anatar once again gives another like he like Celebrimbor has denied him making the rings again, and Anatar needs like another thing to say, and he comes and he's like, "Listen, I came here because it's not because like I wanted to help you. I actually needed you to help me." And so he's saying this thing of like, "I can't create these things because if he could just create them, he would." It's actually that
Mhm.
Celebrimbor is the only person who actually seemingly can make, well, not seemingly, he's the only person who can make the rings. So he does need him to do it, and therefore it would seem not like I would wonder what the reason would be to give him like get him back
It
to
just
starting them and then he
Yeah,
could
because
finish them.
he was saying, "I can't do it. We don't have mithril. Even if you even now that you've convinced me that we should, I
Yeah.
still can't go back inside. It's not worth it. I don't even have it." And he's like, "No, no, no. Look, we have it. Go back inside."
I mean, I guess that's
Because
interesting.
like in that moment, he's just like, "Get back inside," because this is probably taking a lot out of me to make the solution.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
So as soon as
Yeah,
we can
that's fair.
close the doors, I can shut this off, and then I can figure out the mithril problem later.
Anyway, that one is fun. I am excited to see where that goes in the last 2 episodes. And I will say, the Rings of Man is a thing that I am pretty interested in because we know. I mean, if you watch the movies, we have the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, and I
Okay.
think that's this is something I'm very excited for in terms of like what are we getting in the show in terms of Nazgul and ring wraiths. That's what I'm
People
excited.
might have been screaming at me at the beginning of this episode, this recap, because I guess my closest theory as to how Numenor is connected is that at the end of that scene segment, uh, hair guy touches the elven sphere
Yeah.
and he sees Halbrand, and I assume he's getting a ring, right? Like he's like this is like, uh-oh, things are going wrong. In order to maintain my power, I need some help from my buddy Sauron that I'm gonna see through this thing. And I'm pretty sure from my memory that again, that's kind of how Sauron got corrupted, is that he was peeping at Sauron.
He had a crystal ball as well.
So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that Sauron will be able to then influence this guy at Numenor, and then get him a ring of some sort, maybe him, maybe his son, and then they'll use the ring to fight back and maintain their power, and that and in the process, Numenor will probably be destroyed or something. And so I'm sure that's kind of how this connects. It just feels like there's a lot of like let's get a move on this. Like we have to go all of this the back and forth, like just whatever. But that's my theory.
There's some reasons why that exactly makes sense and why there's reasons why like again the show I think to Josh's point a couple of episodes like they just gotta play with what they got and they gotta condense stuff together and they gotta figure stuff out and they're just gonna they don't feel the need to be 100% lore accurate, which I know is the thing that's like annoying people. I will say I saw a lot of people over the last weeks because at TIFF, like people would see that I had a press pass and they would ask like, "What do you do?" I say, "A podcast about TV." So what are you watching? And I would say industry, and they're like, "Oh, I heard that's good." And then I'd say, "And Rings of Power." They say, "Oh, I heard that's bad." And so I feel like there is still this impression that the show is bad. That I
That's
feel
interesting to me because I think there has been such a positive reaction to season 2. But I don't know that it's been a very vocal one in terms of like countering the very vocal "it was bad" thing that was like it was very mainstream to say Rings of Power season 1 was bad.
yes.
Um, Whereas I think season 2, I think is doing very well still, but not as mainstream to say, "Oh, guys, it's actually good now," or anything like that.
Yeah, and I don't think Amazon has not been really saying a lot of like number. There's not been a lot of articles about viewership and things like that. My gut feeling is that when people said I heard it's bad, is likely that they kind of checked out on season 1, didn't check it out, stopped watching, etc. And then to say like, "Oh, I'm watching season 2," they're like, "Oh, it'd be so much work for me to go back and go back into the show." There was I think there was an article about the a certain percentage of people who didn't finish season 1 of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, as like an indicator of maybe it not doing well. This is a show they're heavily invested in, so I don't think that matters, and people can catch up when they catch up. But yeah, I've been doing a little bit of my part to be like, no, no, it's actually pretty fun and good, and just don't listen to the people who I think are yelling about things that you could. People are listening who don't like it. You're allowed to not like it, and you're allowed to not like it for some of the reasons that Tara and I have been talking about, the things we didn't think works, and if the things that are good are not working well enough to balance your enjoyment out. Generally, I walk away from these episodes really enjoying the time I'm spending with an hour plus runtime of an episode and diving into this world. So that's been me so far, and I'm trying to convince people that they should actually be investing their time into the Rings of Power, but it doesn't feel like a
Yeah.
small investment for people to do. I think in the way that other shows that are out there do. I think there's
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure what I've seen so far, is that there has been a decline in viewership, but the
that
reaction
hap-
has generally been positive.
that happens
It
for every show though. Like every
certainly,
show, yeah,
I think what I'm seeing is probably a little bit more than they would have hoped for or
right.
expected in a typical season 2. But that they are already potentially developing season 3, even though it hasn't been
Yeah, I heard.
officially confirmed that they are doing season 3. So,
And in it, yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
so I think
Okay.
that's the current status of things. Um,
Anyway,
uh, the only thing about the episode, I obviously, like I said, I really liked the Anatar stuff. I also did really like the dwarf content here, particularly the this sort of like I liked Prince Durin's reaction to, like, destroying his father and this, like, distraught nature of, I still see him in there, like because you saw him in there for a second. I thought this worked well, even though, again, I think the pace is a little quick for what I would prefer, in this particular storyline. I think that, it's working for me in really showing the effects of these rings and what happens when Sauron actually gets his hands on someone and something.
It's what makes me excited about the Rings of Men, because I think we're gonna get more like this stuff. I think is really is working for me. The Durin dynamic of like having them have a bit of a feud and a spat, and then repairing that only for then something else to get in its way that does seem like insurmountable. I think is quite compelling. So I like this stuff as well. I think it's been very good.
All right. Anything else, Grace, from this episode?
No, we covered a lot. I'm interested in whether the prediction of whether we're done with Theo or not. Seems like maybe
I
we're done
I
with Theo.
I don't think we're done with Theo. I don't know if he gets like a main plot, but he's coming back at some point.
All right, we'll see. I it seemed like Taran, we're on the verge of a battle. I've been here before. You and I have been here where it does seem like in the next episode there will be a
Mm.
battle of a show we're watching. I do think we're getting a battle,
I mean, they
but
literally started hurling fireballs, so
it would be very maybe that was the next time on. We don't know. It'd be very funny if we didn't get a battle. If the theme of 2024 is like, you thought we were going to show you a battle, you fools.
there's 2 episodes left, so certainly we are getting it
I
at some
know,
point.
I know, I know. We shall see. No, that's
We
it.
shall
That's
see
all for
indeed.
Rings of Power. Happy to be back in the world, even though I came back just as Tom Bombadil disappeared in an instant. So
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. Are you gonna Bombadil away? Oh, there's oh, she's gone. She Bombadiled.
Did you find your staff? Did you betray your friends like I told you?
All
uh,
right. Well, tune in next week. We'll be talking about episode 7. Again, I apologize for listen. I've been vibing to this show. This episode just kind of stuck in me a little bit, but there's still stuff I'm really enjoying, and I'm definitely looking forward to next week's. So we will be back to talk about next week's episode. And tastemakers will continue on as well. Industry is trucking on. The Penguin just started as well, Grace.
That's right. We're gonna be chatting about it for sure. Mike Bloom and I, Karen, whenever you're welcome to join us for Penguin. I actually was very honored. I got to go to the Penguin premiere party put on by Crave here in Canada last night. It was very fun. Got to watch the episode. I loved some of the first episode of the Penguin, but I had extremely high expectations coming out of the
Mhm.
Batman that I don't think could have been realistically met. So there are things I liked and some things that I'm hesitant on, but it was one episode of an 8-episode season. So we'll be covering that weekly. Just as a scheduling note for that, the first episode dropped on a Thursday, but then it's going to re-air episode 1 on Sunday, and then it'll be on Sunday nights moving forward. Also, I believe Agatha All Along coverage is coming here. I believe that's a Josh and Sasha adventure that they're going to be doing Agatha All Along. And we know scriptedtv.com now will redirect you to our scripted TV hub on the new RHAP website. So make sure you check that out. Subscribe to the podcast, tell a friend, set your podcast to auto download, subscribe to us on YouTube, click the button for the alerts to make sure you get notified whenever there's a new episode of our podcast. So yeah, we appreciate all of those things to make sure you're listening to us on We Know Scripted TV and you're not missing any of our content, Taryn.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we will see all of you next time.